my channel. My name is Ashley Aireonna. Today I'm here with Steph Sanchez, and it's been a little bit since it's the bye week. How you doing, Steph?
I'm
How's your week
good.
going?
I'm good. I did take a few days off for the bye week. It was nice to just, take a little break from doing, the videos, but we're back now. The bye week's over and, we're focused on the Jags now.
Your grind doesn't stop. Do you normally do a video a day, right? I feel like or multiple sometimes even.
During
I've seen.
yeah, during the weekday for sure. I mean pretty much Sunday through Friday. I have at least one show going, so yep.
Heck yeah, awesome. Well, you don't know this because we're behind a screen, but I smell burning in my house because I very stupidly wanted to make granola today and I put it in the oven and then I was like, oh, I have other stuff to do. So I'll like set a timer. But I set a million timers throughout my day. Like I set a timer when I go for a walk. I set a time like because I'm always getting distracted. I think I just low key have like undiagnosed ADHD. So I set like a million timers a day and I'm like sitting here like preparing for the show and a timer goes off and I'm like, oh, like I probably like didn't think that I was gonna be ready, but like I'm totally here. Like just gonna shut that off. Like it's probably just reminding me that I have a show to start. So I just shut it off and I'm out here typing away on my little laptop, feeling good about myself. Wondering where you are, and then realizing that I didn't send you the link. And as I was doing that, I was like, something smells weird inside my house, and I'm in my room right now with my door shut to my kitchen. And then I was like, oh, that timer was reminding me to take my granola out of the oven. So I ran out of my room, and unfortunately, it's all burnt. It's not
That,
even like I
that
I think I
sucks.
went. It's not even like I normally kind of burn things because I'm just shouldn't be like allowed to be in charge of things. But normally it's like burnt to a point where you're like, all right, you can like eat around it. This was like it was like
Like almost caught on fire.
it was like dangerous. Like it's really good that I noticed it before the stream. Um, which just sucks. There's like I put little chocolate chips in it, and the chocolate chip part of it
Mm.
sounds like that part still kind of looks good. So I'm like, can I like carve out the chocolate chips around the like really
You
burnt
know, probably better
oatmeal
to
that I
make
put in there?
another batch.
Just start over again. Oh man, I even God, I'm kind of this is so illegal of me, but I didn't mean for it to be. I went to like a little store where you like they have the stuff in bulk, and I got these like little nuts and I got macadamia nuts, and I accidentally wrote the almond code on it. And then when I was checking out, the guy was like, "Oh, these are macadamia nuts, not almonds." And I was like, "Oh, like sorry, do you want me to go get the right one?" And he was like, "Oh no, like I don't care if you don't." And I was like, "I don't care," because like in my head I was like, "I know that the macadamia nuts are definitely more expensive." And now I'm like, this is my karma for like gypping the store of their $2 for my macadamia nuts. Anyways, that's not important for literally anything that anyone on here would want to talk about. But what is important is the 49ers practice today. Chase Young was out there, I think, in the 92 jersey. It's going to be his
Yeah.
new number. He had a press conference, talked about being really excited to be in a winning kind of culture and next to Nick Bosa. And I haven't talked with you in a while, so I thought I would ask you, do you think that Chase Young solves all the defensive issues on this team? And if that's a little bit hyperbolic, how do you feel just about him being on the team in general?
I mean, I don't think it's any one guy that's going to fix the issues of the defense, right? Otherwise, we'd be like, Nick Bosa saved the day, but even he has been like struggling, which I think is like a greater symptom of what's just been happening with the defense in general. So no, I mean Chase Young isn't going to solve all the issues. He certainly should help, right, and give maybe Steve Wilkes a little more like flexibility with what to do with the defense, help solidify that pass rush even more. So they can get back to pinning their ears back and just getting after the quarterback, and that should help in the back end. But, he's not going to be a magic pill. I don't think that the 49ers think that either. Like, I would hope, even if this trade hadn't happened, that Steve Wilkes would have gone into this by thinking, okay, let's get back to the drawing board, see how we can fix this. I imagine even Kyle was very involved, and maybe some of the assistant coaches as well were very involved in trying to figure out like what was going on and how they can fix the defensive issues going forward. And so, yeah, I mean, having Chase Young helps, but he's not going to solve everything.
Absolutely. I agree. I think what could be most helpful about him is if he does free up some maybe double teams for Nick Bosa, because I do
Definitely.
think if you look at the amount of sacks that the rest of the guys have outside of Nick Bosa, it's pretty comparable to last year. Just Nick Bosa like went off last year. So if there's any of availability to either make defenses choose, okay, we're going to leave Chase Young on an island, or we're going to free up Nick Bosa. Hopefully, either one of those is a win for the 49ers. And I think that if this defensive line starts getting actually home instead of just getting pressure, so that will really help with the secondary, which has been getting a ton of criticism, which is fair. Although I will say, I feel like this isn't brought up when people are talking about Ward. He was like nursing a heel injury all off season, so I do wonder if that's still affecting him because he does seem to be playing more poorly than he did last year, and I don't think that that's completely random. But yeah, I'm really excited for Chase Young, not Steve Young. I would also be really excited if
Yeah, I
Steve
mean
Young
that
was
doesn't sound too bad
drawn
either.
out there as a defensive lineman. Just I feel like it's like illegal to hit him at this point, so maybe that would be like a cheat code for the 49ers. But no, I'm pretty excited. I don't know if you read Mike Silver's article. He listed last week that the reason that the 49ers were able to get Chase Young for such a reasonable price was there were like character concerns about him in Washington, maybe missing assignments and failing to like listen to coaches and practice super hard. I personally don't think that's going to be an issue on a team like this with a coach like Coach Chris Kosarek. How do you feel about that? Did you hear that article, hear that rumor?
I
Are you
don't
worried about
read
that?
Mike Silver articles because I'm blocked, but I'm glad that I'm glad that you summarized what that was
Damn.
for us. Um no, kind of the same thing as Randy Gregory, right? Like there were those concerns of like character things or things like he's dealt with in the past. And I'll just say the same thing as I said when that trade happened is that, I think the 49ers have such a strong and deep like culture on this team that runs through every single player on it that I don't think one single guy is going to mess up like the chemistry or like the culture that they've built. I think it'll be good for Chase Young to be in a better environment. There's certainly more structure in San Francisco than there is in Washington. One can
Yeah.
argue way better coaching. One can argue, but, probably in favor of the 49ers for sure. So, I'm not too worried about it. I think this is one of the better like cultures in the NFL where any player sees the type of other players who are on this team and they set the example, right? And everyone else who joins the team wants to fall in line with that because it's like, hey,
Definitely.
like this guy who's so good at his job, like look at how much he's excelling on this team and look at what he's doing in practice. Like they set the standard. So um I feel like it's going to be the same for Chase Young. I think this is going to be a great boost for him, like as far as like his morale goes, being back with Nick Bosa as well, and
Yeah.
just as a whole being with this coaching staff.
Yeah, and he mentioned both those things in his press conference right off the bat, just like his kinship with Bosa, and then also how he already can tell that it's a better environment. I also watched an interview with Randy Gregory, who said that he bonded with Young when he first came in earlier today, and that they talked about kind of leaving organizations that were a little bit more chaotic and coming to a stable or more stable organization and feeling that drive that you want to kind of perform because an organization like that believed in you and wanted to bring you in, and you kind of want to prove them right. So I think that we have at the very least some very motivated players that hopefully that new inspiration will kick in. You were kind of talking about like someone bringing in a spark, and when we're talking about bringing in sparks, I think that the emotional heartbeat of this team is Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams. They're the two guys that come out with the boombox every week. I think this team has often, stated out loud and just with their actions that they kind of go as Deebo goes. I think maybe last year Christian McCaffrey filled in for that role a little bit. We saw when he was going off, other players get motivated. But it seemed like with Deebo specifically, even when he was going off, like other players around him felt the fire within him, and like all of a sudden they wanted to hit harder because they saw Deebo hitting harder. And Deebo was back at practice today, so I thought that was a good practice update. He talked about on the Kay Adams show earlier this week that his shoulder was fine. Now, I don't know if that means like medically cleared or just like, oh, I'm feeling fine right now, because I don't think he had like seen the team doctors yet because they were on a bye week. But how
He
do you
said he
feel?
was ready to go, so I would take
That
that to mean like he's cleared and
he's
he's
cleared.
good. Um, but I'm excited. I'm excited to have Deebo back. You know what's crazy is like I think we did kind of see how important Deebo is to not just like the team as far as like the energy goes, but I think as far as how teams defend the 49ers offense, like he was sorely missed out there because the threat of him alone keeps defenses honest. And I think we were seeing teams just not respecting any other guy that was out there
No.
and so and in part as well to Trent being out too is partially why the run game has kind of struggled these last 2 weeks. um but I think having Deebo back, like it kind of reminds me of, maybe this is a weird analogy, and I always use like analogies with the Warriors. I guess not an analogy, but a comparison, like with the Warriors. To me, like Debo's kind of like that Draymond Green kind of like
I love
energy.
that. I love
It's
that.
like he can piss dudes off. Maybe doesn't get in the same trouble as Draymond, but he has that same kind of energy. And sometimes you question like, the team would probably be okay if he's not there kind of thing. But
That's
when he's
so
not
interesting.
there,
But
you're
you,
like,
the
oh
intangible,
shoot.
you, oh, I love that. I love that comparison.
So like, I kind of feel the same way cuz like I've argued in the past like, like Deebo's skill set overlaps with Christian McCaffrey's. Like I don't think they really like need him like out there. Like if they just hypothetically, when the conversation of do they need to choose between Deebo and Brandon Ayuk? Like I always chose Brandon Ayuk because for that reason, I was like, their skill sets overlap. They don't need Deebo as much. But these past 2 weeks have kind of shown me that I think they
Yeah.
do really need Deebo out there. Because of his skill set is actually so unique, even though it does overlap with Christian McCaffrey, it opens things up for McCaffrey in this
Hmm.
offense. It opens things up for other guys as well. So I think defenses
And
are
like,
aware of that, and
I was gonna say,
it keeps them honest.
yeah, even when, cause you've kind of heard like, okay, maybe his lack of production, but I think defenses still scheme for him as if
Yeah.
he's his most elite self. You know what I mean? So that's
Oh, yeah.
it's
You
taking
have
away
to.
resources from the other team because they don't want a chance that Deebo could go off. So they have to like allocate people to making sure that that doesn't happen, which does free up those other guys way more. And I feel like we've seen him, and maybe that's how other defenses feel too. Like when maybe comparing it to him to Brandon Ayuk, you've really seen him be able to step up in those most pivotal moments. Not that Brandon Ayuk doesn't. I think he's consistently been. I think he's probably the most consistent wide receiver on the team. But like when it comes to that like next level, you've really seen Deebo be able to take it there in a way that you haven't seen from other guys on the team so far.
Yeah.
And I was kind of hoping like in his absence, like Kittle would get more targets and stuff, but I think also Kyle Shanahan maybe has more faith in Deebo too, because you didn't really see Ray getting those same amounts of targets that you would if it was Deebo. You didn't see I think George Kittle should be getting 10 targets a game, and he was involved a little bit more, but I think that the faith that Kyle has in Deebo is also something that is a little bit underutilized. I wrote down the amount of targets that guys have gotten, and Deebo's gotten 5 targets in the red zone, which is the second most on the team, just behind Christian McCaffrey, who has had 7 passing, not rushing. So I kind of found that interesting too. Like when we're who does maybe Kyle trust to get the ball to, even above Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk has only gotten 2 targets in the red zone this year, which I think is
Yeah.
criminal. I think he deserves
That's
more, but
crazy. That's
yeah.
crazy because I feel like last year he was like the magician kind of in the red zone where he can get open against anyone. Yeah, so I don't know what's going on there. But at the same time, they have Christian McCaffrey now who can pretty much just punch it in from like, okay, you're within like 10 yards or so. Give it to Christian. He's gonna get the touchdown, right? As proven by his what is it, 17
Yeah,
game?
he's gonna
Yeah,
break
17
the
straight games.
record this week against
I
against
think
the
he will.
Jaguars, right?
I think he will. And it's honestly looked pretty easy. Like he's getting these touchdowns in like the first half of the game, like in the
Yeah.
first quarter
It's like
usually.
the
So
first thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so
They just like
I
knock
think
it out. They're like, okay, that's now we're gonna win the game. We just had to get that out of the way.
well, hopefully they can win the game because like these
Yeah.
these last three they haven't, despite those touchdowns. But I do think maybe that's part of the reason that we're not seeing as many throws or targets for Ayuk in the red zone.
Yes. Really quick, I thought J. Cruz 49er had a funny comment. I feel like he just blocks anyone for anything. I feel like you could have been like,
I
great
mean, he
job,
kind of does. I
sir.
didn't say so. Yeah, the reason I got blocked from Mike Silver, it was during the time where he was reporting stuff about Trey Lance, and I
Yeah.
don't remember the specific
I don't
like
know how.
article, but I didn't at the time I didn't really buy it. Credit to him, he was right the entire way. I think my own ignorance, I didn't want to
Me
believe some
neither.
of
It's
those
okay.
things. So I kind of took it out on him. Maybe just replied to one of those articles, and yeah, it really didn't take much, and it's not like I was like super disrespectful or anything.
Really, Steph? I feel like that's totally your vibe. I'm just kidding. Wait, really quick, because we're back on practice updates. They also opened up Samuel Womack, Darnell Luter Jr., and
Barely.
defensive end Robert Beals practice windows. So they have to practice, I think it's for 3 weeks, and then the team
Yeah.
can decide whether or not to activate them or sit them for the rest of the year. If I was going to guess, I would guess that Samuel Womack would have probably the best chance of actually being activated out of the three of them, just because I mean defensive end they're pretty stacked out right now, and even though I've heard good things from Luter Jr. when it was the off season, I feel like rookie fifth round pick maybe uh, didn't practice all off season or yet so far. I don't know if they'd add him in, but I could see potentially them bringing in Samuel Womack for that Oliver spot. But maybe how do you feel about the fact that their windows are open? Do you think that means anything? Do you think any of them could be activated? How are you excited? Are you not excited? Is this kind of a non-story?
No, I think it's great news because I think one of the things that we're all kind of like worrying about with the 49ers is like depth and like defensive depth, corner depth specifically, because I think we've all seen for these last few weeks how close this team is. They're literally an injury away to any of the three starting corners, seeing Ambry Thomas out there and starting. And I think that's something that we all collectively agree is not something that we want to see in any game, right? So I think corner
I'm glad
depth
that
is
they
huge.
seem to be over that experiment.
I think so too. Like I think they now realize it. Like this like Ambry's not really it. He's cool for like depth, but not fourth. For number 4 depth. I think he needs to be a
Yeah.
little further out potentially. So Sammy Womack, being back does give you that opportunity. And he can play inside and outside, right? So I think he also gives you that versatility where like, okay, if Oliver is so disappointing to the point where you want to take him out, okay, Oliver can go in there, or you can have a Womack play outside and have Lenore kick in inside and replace Womack's. I mean, sorry, Oliver. So yeah, I mean, it just gives them that versatility. I'm excited to see Daryl Luter. I'm not expecting anything out of Daryl Luter just because like he is a rookie. I mean, I'm just excited to see
Yeah.
what he can bring, how he can learn. I think if anything, like he'll be useful for special teams. That's probably where we'll start to see him. But like I said, I think as depth, it's never a bad thing to have those guys available. And as far as like Beal goes, you're right. Like I don't really expect that he'll have an impact, but maybe they want to open his window just in case there's an injury, in these next 3 weeks, right? And you always have the option of having Beal out there. But depth at the defensive line is not a bad thing
Yeah,
either.
it's
Like
really
that
good.
was one of the things that I thought was another plus to having Chase Young there because suddenly you have some capable guys like Clinton Farrell, Randy Gregory,
Randy Gregory.
who you can now rotate in at any point, right? And that keeps your
What do you
starters
think that
fresh
this
too.
What do you think this means for Drake Jackson? He's like been like we didn't even mention him when we just mentioned death.
I didn't
That
want
it's
to.
kind of a disappointment, right? Just because this off season, I feel like there was a lot of hype going into the season. I don't know if you bought into it, but I did. The coaching staff was like, he was here every day, grinding, adding weight to his squat. Although I did turn up my eye a little bit because I felt like the number that he said, he was like the bench press number. I was like, I feel like that's not very high. But then I was like, I don't know. I know that people aren't training like to be powerlifters. They're training for like agility and speed. And so I felt like really judgy. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? Like what matters is Drake Jackson's ability to like bend and move and be fluid. You don't want to be like, oh, I can muscle this up, but then like, break your arm. So but it seems
Yeah, I
like
mean,
bend or not, he's really down the totem pole, which I mean, I feel like I don't know how you felt, but after that first game, I'm like, Drake Jackson season, let's go, baby. Even though I knew that they were cleanup sacks, I still, the
yeah,
fan in me
no,
had hope.
I was very optimistic too, and maybe like too optimistic because I know some people were still like very skeptical after the off season, all the reports. I just was like hopeful. Like I was also always like very optimistic about him in general this season. Second year, I thought he was gonna make that leap, right? We're just not seeing it, and like I think of course like that's part of the reason why they've felt they've had to bring in two new edge rushers,
Yeah.
right, like via trade, because like Drake Jackson's not really doing it. Clinton Farrell has been good. Like I don't think he's been bad, but I also don't think he's at that caliber where like he's not that at the Samson Ebukam caliber, maybe just a notch below. He's not at the Charles Omenihu caliber, maybe just a notch below. Um, and so they need someone who's going to be at that level to complement what Nick Bosa brings you. But I'm excited to see Clinton Farrell as like a rotational guy who can go in situational spots. But Drake Jackson, I'd be shocked if unless there's an injury. I'd be shocked if we see him on the field um, at any point from here on out.
Do you think it's something that could like improve in years to come, or do you think he's kind of
I mean, like you,
you're just talking
it's
about
just
this
this.
season?
It's a
You're
yeah.
just
I
talking
mean,
about
it's the
this season.
second year, so I'm not
Yeah.
like completely counting him out and think that he's not ever going to
No, I'm
improve as a
sorry, Drake
player.
Jackson. Steph Sanchez has written you
Like
off.
you're done.
I'm clipping this.
Bust. No, no, no. He's. I wouldn't say he's a bust. Like it's too early to really say for sure. But the arrow isn't pointing up. Let's.
Yeah.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
And there was a lot of hype on him, like on the Niners getting him maybe at good value where he was drafted. But if you do compare him to other guys who were drafted in those other defensive ends that were drafted in those rounds, like I guess Max Crosby, but Max Crosby's like such an outlier. Most of them, when you're not drafted in the top, few guys, you are more like a rotational piece. So if Derek Jackson can turn into that as the years go on, it wouldn't actually be a huge disappointment. It's more like the fan in us that like kind of bought into the early hype that would be
Yeah.
disappointed. But as for like his longevity in the league or anything, it doesn't say anything about that. But so those were some practice updates. But now I wanted to kind of ask you, reflecting on the first couple of games of the season and on the rest of the season coming out, I feel like there's reason for optimism, right? Because the 49ers have been here before. They've hit lulls before. Now it feels for me, it feels disappointing because I kind of felt like they couldn't keep doing this where they get in these lulls and then they have to fight and claw their way back. And then by the time they're, at the door, they're burnt out and tired. And it's like, okay, the whole point of you starting out fast was to try to get the number one seed so that you weren't burnt out and tired. And you've somehow, you put yourself in this position again. So I don't doubt that they have the players and the mentality like on the team to be able to pull themselves out of it. Like, I don't think that they're just going to, throw their hands up and be like, oh, well, we suck now. Like, I don't think that the guy, especially the veterans on this team, would let something like that happen. I think they're going to, try to claw their way out of this as much as possible. My worry is just like, while you're clawing your way out, how does that kind of affect you long term? So I just wanted to know, do you have any reasons for optimism moving forward? Do you have any concerns? How do you feel like Do you think the 49ers are going to go on a little bit of a run?
They have to. They don't have a choice. And like you said, that's part of the hole that they dug themselves in, which now they're at this like back against the wall point. And in the past, they've performed very well in that role, being somewhat like the underdog, having a claw out of a situation that they put themselves in, which is, I guess, kind of funny. It's like we can get out of this mess we put
Yeah.
ourselves in. It's like, okay. Yeah, no, I mean, the start was great, but these last 3 games have been a huge disappointment. So yeah, they don't really have a choice but to win this next one, and they have to go on a run. And it's going to be easier said than done because now you're playing some tougher teams than you did in like the first half of the season, right? And so you need to gear up and be on your best level when you play the Eagles, when you play the Seahawks in like 3 consecutive weeks, and then you play like the Ravens, right? So it's not going to get any easier for them, but they need to make sure that they're at their best, um, because we just haven't been seeing it these last 3 weeks. If they can get back to looking like the best version of themselves, then yeah, there's a conversation of optimism, and yeah, this looks like a team that can get the number 2 seed. Honestly, Ashley, I think the number 1 seed is out of question now for the
Yeah,
49ers.
Philly looks next level. Is that how you feel right
They
now?
Yeah, they look
Yeah.
great. And this is what happens when you F around and you're not at the top of your game. You let other teams get your spot. Look at what happened last week when the 49ers lost to the Bengals. The Seahawks win and you're tied with the Seahawks. Like, come on, you can't let that happen.
No.
The Seahawks lost just yesterday to the Ravens. Okay, fine. It's your opportunity now to like reclaim your spot, top spot in the NFC West, and reclaim your spot as one of these top teams. And it starts with that game against the Jags coming up, right? And so I'm still kind of waiting to see how optimistic I'm gonna be. I'm waiting to see what team shows up on Sunday.
I feel like it will be a more motivated and determined team, and I'm hoping that the impact that the 49ers were hoping for with the addition of Chase Young will show itself. And I think if this 49ers defense can be more dominant, that will help out the offense. Are you worried about Brock Purdy moving forward? Do you think like he's in his head at all? Do you think he's lost? I feel like a key foundation of or key characteristic of how he's been described is like his unshakable confidence and poise and accuracy. And when you saw the first 5 games of that, you were like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And then these last couple games, he's looking a lot less Brock Purdy-ish and a lot more like he crumbles in the most important moments, which has been a little bit disappointing to see when it comes to a guy that we had a lot of confidence in early on. Are you worried about that moving forward, or do you think that he'll also bounce back?
I'm not worried about Brock. Like, I do still think like even in those moments, even in those drives where he ended up like turning the ball over, like he was still poised. Like it wasn't like him like falling apart. But you have to clean up those interceptions. Like that much is true. Some of those came from just like dumb decisions. One of them when he was running out of bounds and try to throw it over the defender. Like you could have just, gotten out of bounds, lived to see another down, and that's it. It's not like it was like a 3rd down, 4th down play where it's like, I have to make something happen. And I fear that in these last couple games, like at the end, he's felt like it all falls on him, especially with the run game not really being what it's been, these last few weeks. With Trent not there, his offensive line is kind of, struggling a bit. Deebo's not there, all these things that I think have helped them and he's benefited from. Like which I hate to say because like a lot of the criticism or skepticism about Brock Purdy came from uh, people wondering, okay, what is he going to look like in these adverse situations? What is he going to look like when he doesn't have like all of these special players around him? And like, I feel like we got some glimpses of that. Like, it's a small sample size, so it's not like the book has been written on him. Like, he can change that part of him
Yeah.
still, right? But it's not great to see those
Also,
things.
lots of quarterbacks are going to look bad in those situations.
Yeah, I mean that's fair too. I think that's something people don't take into account either, right? Like, yeah, one of your star players is out, of course you're gonna maybe not look at Sharp, but it is unfortunate that we've kind of seen him look like this these last couple games, and really just in those moments. He's had some great games, like he against the Bengals, he
Yeah.
was awesome. He was awesome, which I hate to say because it's
It's
like
hard because
he was
he's like the
awesome
reason
aside
they were
from
in the
the
game, but then
yeah
also lost them the game. Yeah.
he was awesome aside from the plays where he wasn't awesome. Um, but no, like
You're
he
like,
was
if you
so
take out the most important moments where he threw the ball to the
yeah.
other team,
He
actually really great performance.
he no, he like
Unfortunately.
really though, like it wasn't like a bad performance, but you in those moments you got to clean that up. I do think he will clean that up because, like I said, I think knowing now that those plays are in the back of his mind, I have to imagine that, he'll be like, okay, I can't take that risk. Not now. Like, just
Yeah.
live to see another down, like, let me just take the check down in that moment. I don't want him to turn into like someone who doesn't take certain risks, right? Because I think part of what makes him good these games that we've seen him start has been from like him taking some calculated risks, right?
Yeah.
But maybe those
But
aren't
being
always
smart
going to
with the
work.
football.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I think, and look, he was throwing
I feel like
interceptions
a
left and
lot.
right in camp, right?
Mhm.
Regular season started, he cleaned that up. In camp, you're working on things, you see what you can get away with. Now he's kind of starting to see, okay, maybe I can't really get away with that. Defenses are now baiting me in this way, and I don't know, but I feel like he'll eventually learn to get some of that out of him. So I do hope that we see Brock in another situation where he's down and he can win the game for the team. Like, it really sucks because he did lead them to a potentially game winning drive, or I guess it would have been tying, against the Browns, right? When
Yeah.
Moody could have hit that field goal, and Moody didn't make the kick. Otherwise, we'd be talking about how great that drive was and Brock Purdy brought him back, right? But like that didn't happen,
Mhm.
so no one's gonna remember that. So
And
he has it in him.
you get a lot of people maybe like discrediting that, saying like a lot of that was on Ayuk. But when we're talking about calculated risk, throwing the ball up to Ayuk and kind of trusting his playmakers to make him right has been something that Brock Purdy has done since he's entered as the 49ers starter that at least I have thought is really have considered very impressive, considering like Jimmy G maybe wouldn't take those opportunities and didn't give
Yeah,
his, the 49ers are paying these guys, maybe not paying Ayuk, but these are Pro Bowl caliber at least playmakers. I think having a quarterback that is willing to kind of trust those guys and give them the opportunity to make him look good, even if the ball is a little short, even if it's a little behind, he's trusting like I have good enough chemistry. This guy is good enough that he's going to adjust to the ball. And 9 times out of 10, they've made him look right. Just unfortunately, in these last couple situations where I feel like he's thought a lot of it is more on him. Um,
yeah,
maybe it's not getting flustered. Maybe isn't the right word, but we're seeing a lack of accuracy than we're normally doing, and a lot more throwing to or throwing to a spot with anticipation, but not realizing his surroundings. So maybe somehow, obviously it's easier for me to say from the couch, but somehow slowing down and being able to get a full picture of what's going on, which I know he obviously has to think very instinctually in the moment. But some of those passes, you just think you're like, if you took a 1/100th of a second, you would have seen that there was a guy 2 feet in front of you. You
yeah,
know, and you kind of hope like the decisions like that can be adjusted to, because it's not necessarily like it's not like Carson Wentzy, where I feel like that's more of a mentality that, and maybe shaking something like that that's been around for so long could be a little bit harder. Where I feel like we've seen Brock Purdy go through large stints of times where he wasn't making decisions like this, and it was only when he was put in a position where maybe he felt like he had more of it on his shoulders. I think also like we're talking about Brock Purdy improvements, but I would love to talk to you about Kyle Shanahan. I was disappointed with him in the last couple games. I know the loss of Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel were really impactful, and earlier we talked about them maybe being motivators and heartbeats of the team and team leaders. But I was really hopeful, first of all, that Kyle would make in-game adjustments when he lost them in the middle of the game. But then even when he didn't do that, I feel like we came on here and I was like, okay, well, next week we're going to see a better game plan. We're going to see Ray Ray more prepared, because Ray Ray kind of admitted that he wasn't fully prepared to step into that role. I was like, we're going to see Kittle targeted way more. We're going to see Ayuk. And then the next game, it's like Ayuk didn't get a pass until the end of the second quarter. So it's like, okay, well, why is the ball not being distributed? Why is your only game plan like a dump off to Christian McCaffrey or handing the ball to Christian McCaffrey? The defense is keying in on that. And without Deebo, as even if people are just going to want to call him a decoy, without him, that play isn't as effective, and you're not distributing to your playmakers. And that's been kind of disappointing. Earlier, when I talked about Deebo and his importance and Kyle Shanahan's trust in him, I talked about how Deebo has gotten 5 targets in the red zone, which is second behind Christian McCaffrey, who's had 7 passing targets. But then if you look at the other guys, Ayuk has only had 2. Deebo has had, or sorry, Deebo's had 5, but Ayuk has only had 2. Juice has had 1. Bell has had 1. George Kittle has had 3. So it's like, you're not targeting your other guys in the red zone. And I understand Christian McCaffrey is scoring and going off, and a lot of those targets are going to him, even if it's not passing, it's running the ball. So he is scoring. But when you think about a team that's only scoring 17 points, you might think, hey, let's start, especially Ayuk. I would love to see him and George Kittle getting more opportunities closer to the end zone, and maybe, this offense putting up more points on the board. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of our last shows that we did together, we kind of shared that same frustration of like not seeing enough adjustments, right? And and then when we saw, or we like noticed in consecutive weeks what defenses were doing and they weren't respecting other guys, like I thought even more so, okay, like they're gonna have an adjustment for that. Like Kyle will adjust to take advantage of that, but like we just didn't see it. It almost felt to me like Kyle was just bracing for the bye week. Let's just get through these games. Let's get to the bye week. We'll have Deebo and maybe Trent back, and then all will be well. I don't know. Like I don't know if he just doesn't trust his other guy. Like maybe he doesn't trust Raymond McLeod. Like we were questioning that earlier, right? Like does he trust
Yeah.
Raymond McLeod to the level that he does Deebo? Clearly not. I mean,
No.
and it could just be like different skill set. Like Raymond McLeod's not really built to handle the same kind of plays and workload that Deebo does, right? But
Yeah.
also, I don't know. I felt like he could have done different things, but I'm also not I'm not some type of football genius
You're
that
not.
I
You
can
don't want
be
to be the
like.
next head coach. You don't think you? That's crazy. I called you on here
That
because
is crazy.
I thought you were gonna come out and be like, actually, I have the play calls written down, and I'm gonna
Yeah,
tell
I'm gonna bring out like the whiteboard and be like, see, this is what they should have done. But no, so I honestly I don't have an idea of what they could have done different. I just know I kept seeing the same thing. And yeah, I was a little disappointed in that for sure.
When we're talking about team identity, I've always thought that the 49ers team identity is a strong, dominant defense, a all-out rushing or a dominant rushing attack, and an all-out physical mindset. I feel like all 3 of those things have been completely missing in these last 3 games. When you are looking at this 49ers team, what would you say right now this season their identity has been? Because perhaps from the beginning of the season, their rushing game and a dominant defense. I mean, if we look at the beginning of the season, they were winning kind of on offense, which is a little bit new for Kyle Shanahan. Not saying that the defense wasn't helpful, but when you're scoring over 30 points every game, I think it was 9 straight games in a row, that kind of changes your style. Where previously under the Shanahan regime, I'd always considered the 49ers, even though Kyle is a offensive minded head coach, I always kind of considered them a defensively dominant team. So what if you were just to describe this 49ers team right now? Do they have an identity? Would you be able to describe them, or have they been too inconsistent so far to describe them? And what do you think, if they do have an identity, do you think that they can get back to it? What do you think it should be moving forward for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know who they are right now, right? And
Mm,
like that's
I
why I
don't think
want to
they know who
see.
they are. I think that's the problem.
That's why I want to see what they look like after the bye week, and then I'll probably be like, okay, this is the same team from the first 5 weeks. Hopefully, like that's what I'm hoping, right?
Yeah.
So in the first 5 weeks, like if you asked me what their identity was, I would have said balanced. Because yes, in years past, it was like so defense heavy, and the offense seemed like it was just doing enough because a lot of it was trying to, keep Jimmy within like a good structure where he can be successful. And so there were some limitations to the offense because of that, right? So I think that's why they were very like defense heavy. And, you get into this year, new defensive coordinator, maybe not as dominant, but in those first 5 weeks, they were doing enough to get the job done. Maybe like, you're seeing some things you're not used to seeing, but they were bending and not necessarily breaking. At the same time, the offense was putting up points. So they were balanced because to me, like both sides of the ball were pretty good, like enough that you can beat teams by like 20 points, right? So that's what I would have said first 5 weeks. These last few weeks, I would say I actually asked people like to describe the 2023 49ers after like the three losses, and I got a bunch of different answers. Of course, they were all negative, mostly because it was, after the
Yeah.
three losses. So I got people saying like front runners, disconnected. I think one of the words I used was discombobulated. I saw some people put that too. Uh, I think
I
those
think
are
those
all
are
good words.
fair. I think those are
Yeah, those are all
fair.
good words to describe like the 49ers that we saw like in the previous 3 weeks, right? And
Even
so I don't really
even
know
not
which version we're going to see on Sunday.
yeah. That's just hard. And I think it's hard like because we've seen the 49ers go through these lulls, I still have like a delusional confidence about me that I'm like they're going to go to the NFC
I think
Championship.
I
Like
think they're
maybe they won't win
also
the
a
Super
little
Bowl.
delusional too.
I know. Maybe that's not good. They need to be less like we're allowed to be delusional as fans. You guys need to be taking this stuff seriously.
I mean,
Um,
honestly, at some point, like this whole
because you
we've
can't
done it
always come
before.
back.
Yeah,
Like
you
that's
can't.
not. Yeah.
It's not always going to work out that way. So
No.
they just need to
And
get their head out of their ass and
that's
stop
kind of
acting
why
like,
that's
yeah,
kind of why I felt like they
complacent. Chris has a good one
started
in the comments. Complacent.
complacent is good. That's kind of why I felt like they started so hot is because you heard Fred Warner, you heard George Kittle talk about kind of the effort that it takes to go, to the top of the hill, but not be able to reach, the
Yeah.
or to climb up the hill, but not be able to reach the top. You've heard other veterans talk about like it feels like they played a whole extra season because they keep going this far. And there's like I feel like there's only so much kind of disappointment that you can take before you start. I mean, this is the first season that we've kind of heard, not that they're throwing each other under the bus because that might be a little bit too harsh, but we've heard Kyle like publicly criticize his defensive coordinator. We heard Nick Bosa kind of put out some discontentment maybe, which
Yeah.
all those things are fine. Like I don't think it was like too harsh what was saying. I think it was an honest look into maybe how they were thinking. And I know Kyle Shanahan kind of went out later and took his own responsibility. And in the same interview where Nick Bosa criticized the scheme a little bit, he also criticized himself. So I'm not saying that they're like fully, putting blame on other people. But when you compare how they're talking about it to previous teams, I felt like we never heard that no matter how bad the fire from the fans and the media got, the locker room, whether or not they were like this inside or not, outside publicly, they always really had 100% had each other's back. And I still think they probably do, but I do think like if they were to lose against Jacksonville, if there was like, I think there's only so far you can push a team before you kind of see that turmoil within. It and maybe that wouldn't get there until they felt like it was really impossible for them to reach their ultimate goal. Like maybe they'd stick together for quite some time. But I do think that that's something to be concerned about. Um, I think it was Vish who was pointing out like dominant defenses like that have never last over like 5 years. I think the longest one was that Legion of Boom era with the Seahawks, and it's only so long that you can have the same players be holding up that standard of play before you see a drop off. And you just hope that they kind of reach the mountaintop before they get there, because it'd be really disappointing if this team that we believe to be so great, currently they wouldn't even be remembered as the same as the Bills, because the Bills at least got to the Super Bowl every single time. For people who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm talking about the Bills that they never won the Super Bowl, but they went, I think, 5 years in a row, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this, like they're running out of patience almost. And you're right, like you aren't gonna be as dominant as you were the previous year. Like the idea that you're just gonna go out and be able to do it again every year is like that's just wishful thinking. And that's
Yeah.
why everyone talks about a window, because windows, like the window to get in the championship in any sport is real. Like there's only so many times that you can try it with the same group of guys before like the fire is going to burn out, right? So that's what you're hoping, that like with this team, we hope that we're not seeing like the fire burn out. I don't think that's the case really yet. Just because of how they looked at the beginning of the season. Like there's no
Yeah.
way, if the fire burned
Like
out,
that
it
team
wouldn't, I
still
don't think it'd
exists.
be, yeah, it wouldn't be in the middle of the season, I don't
Yeah.
think, right? So I still have hope. And Randy pointed out, Kyle's record in October is 11-19 or 11-19. So that's not great. I don't know what that's about, right? That seems like that's a trend. That's a trend at
That
that
is.
point, not a great one. But this team at the second half of the season has
I
always
think
been
I know
able
what
to
it
find
is.
like a
Drake
juice.
always puts out. I think I know what it is. Drake always puts out an album in October, so Kyle Shanahan's jamming, and there's lots of candy. And you know what? That
There's
affects your
lots of
blood
candy.
sugar. It makes you like kind of panicked. You get a little excited at the wrong times. You're not
Too
sleeping
much
very well because
sugar. Yeah.
you're eating those, the Snickers and the caramel, and you're like doing that, and you're supposed to be sleeping, but they have to stay up because they're game planning. So they're like, okay, well, what about a Reese's? And then they're arguing over Reese's, and now all of a sudden the position coaches are like, well, I want the Skittles, and there's only one packet of Skittles. And you know what I mean?
You've
And now you're wasting
you've
out on
definitely thought of this before, I think.
that. you know, I have empathy now that we put it that way for Kyle. And maybe
You
we
know
should just
what?
boycott the month of October and just skip straight to November where everyone is thankful for each
Yeah,
other.
seriously. I
Okay.
mean, no, really. Like, hopefully Sunday, because it's now November, right? Hopefully
Yeah,
Sunday
that's
is
in the
when they
past.
can. Oh,
I
yeah,
like
right.
that.
Like,
I want to do that
hopefully,
too. I want to get rid of my October. It's a
just
new.
kind of doesn't just
It's like
doesn't
January,
exist.
new me, new year, new me. That's Kyle Shanahan, but with November.
New month.
He's like, all right, I put you through it. I just had to tease you. I had to make you a little excited.
They need
But you're right. You don't want to.
they need a no loss November. I don't know what's
No
happening in
loss. Oh, I
October, but
like
they
that.
need a
I
no
like that.
loss November.
What is it? No shave November, or is that no shave October? For the
Yeah,
for
and
the
then no
beards,
nut.
right?
And
Yeah,
no
I
nut.
know. I knew that one.
I like
Cool, cool.
I'm not talking about that.
Yep. This guy said it's a trend for Kyle as well. Hopefully that trend can stop though, because I agree that I don't think it's hard, because the fan in me is like, okay, we've been here before, we can do it again. But then when I hear other people say that, I'm like, well, you can't count on that. Like
Yeah.
you have to look at,
The players
you have
the
to think
players
that you got
themselves say
lucky.
that, which is
I
concerning to
know.
me. It's
I
like
know.
you can't keep thinking you can do this. Like
Yeah.
it's so weird. Like they just keep hanging their hat on, well,
Both Deebo and Fred Warner on their podcast. I find it so interesting that players have podcasts nowadays. I'm totally here for it, but it is interesting to kind of get a little bit of a insight into maybe how they're thinking. I really love the one with Fred Warner because he tries to still be very like leader and like kind of not PR, because he does try to, be casual. Is that the right term? He tries to be fluid, but you can tell
Yeah.
that there's like a bit of like a, I'm not airing out my, the team's dirty laundry on here. But then his wife, who I love, is like very fan. So she'll be like, she was like going in on Moody. She was like, yeah, I'm like
I
so
love that
she was
she
like,
knows like every like
she does. She
she's on
before the
top of
Bengals
it.
game, she was like, Joe Burrow's good. She like low key was like, yeah, I thought that they were gonna beat Kirk Cousins because like, doesn't Kirk Cousins suck? And he was like kicking her, like, don't say that. like if you say that, they're gonna think that
He's like, this is
we
gonna go
told you that.
viral. Stop. No, but
But what
like,
I was gonna say about
yeah,
that
it's
is both
interesting.
of them, Deebo and Fred Warner, on their podcast, both alluded to that, like, oh, we've been here before. sentiment, so like we're not worried. And it's like, okay, well, can you look at that as like luck instead of just like the standard that
Yeah.
you just like happen to have to suck? Because like I said, even if they bounce back, it worries me. Like this turn is concerning for me, not because I'm, down in the dumps about the rest of the season, but because I think it affects their ability to win the Super Bowl, especially when you look at a team like the
Yeah.
Eagles.
Like,
And that's
okay,
ultimately the goal. The goal isn't can we come back out of this slump and like win some playoff
exactly.
games. The goal is can we win a Super Bowl?
And if you're trying to get a Super Bowl, your goal in season should be getting that number 1 seed. Cuz
Yeah.
it's now 2 years in a row that they've like screwed the pooch to be able to get the 1 seed. And look, let's just say they figure it out. They have a strong second half of the season. They get to the playoffs. They're not going to get that 1 seed. You're heading into Philadelphia in the winter or whatever and having to play a playoff game. Like, you just shot yourself in the foot, and you're seeing the results of it months later. Yeah, you went on this like nice run and everything, but the consequences of these last 3 games are going to show up in the playoffs. And I feel like that's not
That's like something they
they're
don't
like
get.
brushing it
Yeah.
off as like, well, yeah, like we'll be fine. We'll make it to playoffs. Yeah, but
Yeah.
when you have to play in Philadelphia, in the playoffs, if you get that far, you're in trouble. That's not a situation you want to be in. So again,
Yeah.
like they're digging themselves into a hole.
And this is like when we're talking about they've came out and they've said, oh, it's like we played a whole extra season, all this. It's like, okay, well, get the first seed then, that way you can have an extra rest. Because in the player
Exactly.
interviews that I watched today, all of them talked about how necessary this bye week was and this rest. And it's like, okay, really, and they were like, oh, this is really going to refresh us to turn our season around for the rest of the season. And it's like, that's great for the rest of the season. I wish you were in a position to also get that before the Super Bowl, because are you going to feel like you're all talking about how burnt out you were by this time? You're going to have to do this again and then somehow have an extra gear after that. And that kind of reminds me, or not reminds me, but brings me to this comment when we're talking about extra gears. No, this is a rain game one, which is also one that I want to talk about. But when I'm talking about extra gears and kind of winning gritty, I semi disagree with this comment. But I'm so grateful for you for commenting. Hector says the Eagles playing the Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks in the next 4 weeks. They're not going to blow, and they're not blowing teams out. We can catch pace with them if we get right after the bye. I'm not saying that you can't catch pace with them, but the Eagles have been really impressive, not because they're blowing teams out, but because they've shown that they're able to win the gritty games. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of personally felt like the Cowboys almost outplayed the Eagles, but it seems like the outcome of that game wasn't surprising to me, because the Eagles just somehow know how to win these close games. They know how to win gritty. They also know how to win blowing teams out. But like when I was, if you told me like who's gonna win in a brawl, the where both teams are playing extremely well, the Cowboys or the Eagles, I feel like the Cowboys are always the team that's gonna lose that fight, even if they're playing better. They just at the end are gonna find a way to lose, and the Eagles somehow have been the team that finds a way to win all different types of ways, whether it's running, whether it's passing, whether it's relying on their quarterback. Okay, Jalen Hurts is hurt, so we can't rely on him as much. We're going to rely on the other edges of our team. Our trenches are so dominant and physical. I think right now the Eagles are in another class, not just because of how they're necessarily playing other teams, but because they've shown that they've been able to win multiple different ways. And right
Yeah.
now, I think those commentators that you were talking about earlier, I think the Niners kind of are front runners, and they've only shown that they've been able to win a certain way so far. I'm not saying that they can't change, but right now, and even in previous years with Kyle Shanahan, I feel like they have a very specific way that they like to win. They even admitted to Kurt Benkert, or not admitted, but he admitted this on a live stream in 2021, that Kyle Shanahan doesn't find it necessary to practice 2-minute drills because he doesn't think his team is going to be down much, and it's a waste of practice
Wait,
time.
who said that?
To Kurt Benkert, he was the backup quarterback in 2021. He played for the Packers, and then he came over to the 49ers.
I remember that was a
Yeah,
short
yeah,
stint. That's,
yeah.
I
But
mean, I don't know
apparently,
about
I don't
that. 'Cause
use.
I mean, in training camp, while it's not a lot, like they do
Do they
practice
do that? That's
in
okay.
camp at least. I don't know if they're doing that in
I'm
the
calling
regular
up
season,
I'm
but
calling up Kurt and being like, check your sources, man. 'Cause I heard Stephanie. All
I
right.
heard.
She might not be ready to call the plays for the team, but she's ready to question you. So get to it.
Yeah, no, but I mean, if that's something they're not doing enough, yeah, maybe that makes sense. While why they would struggle in those types of moments, right? So I don't know. Yeah, to me, like, it doesn't matter that the Eagles aren't blowing teams out. Like, that would have been a great argument for if the 49ers had won just as many games or were still winning. But like now that the 49ers have lost the last few games and the Eagles continue to win, it's like that's a moot point. I don't care that the Eagles are not blowing teams out. They're still winning their games,
Yeah.
unlike the 49ers, like who, unless they're blowing teams out, they apparently can't win. So, yeah, I mean, that's my concern with the Eagles right now. I think everyone should be concerned with the Eagles right now. So,
I completely agree. And I think teams are. I
I
think
hate
teams
to
are
say it.
afraid.
I
And
hate to say
I
it.
think I mean if we're looking at how the Bills have played recently, like I'm favoring the Eagles, I think, in the Bills game. The Chiefs, I mean, I never want to doubt the Chiefs because I feel like they just are on, they scare me. I never want to say something bad. I feel like that's gonna jinx them and they're gonna win their fucking 14th Super Bowl or some shit. And someone's gonna come back and be like, remember when you thought the Eagles were gonna win? So but I think the Eagles have a really good shot against all of those teams that you mentioned coming up. But I appreciate the comment, Hector. This will move us maybe to our last topic, which Nathan, I was going to say Nathaniel, but that's Nathan. Says, do you guys see weather playing a factor in Sunday? I heard it may rain, so the team has to prepare for
Oh
that too. I
Lord,
kind of wanted to
don't get
ask
me
you
started on the
just
rain.
about yeah, I just wanted to ask you about Jacksonville in general, but I had to bring up that comment because Kyle Shanahan, I mean, we've talked about his record when he's down at halftime. His record when it rains is like they shouldn't show up because for some reason, even though this team is supposed to be like a
Oh
run
no.
first dominant defense team, the rain comes and they get afraid. I remember there was a whole controversy about them not practicing with wet footballs a year or two ago. I don't know. Kyle Shannon and rain, he's like me. I don't like the rain. I respect it, but like,
He just like
you
me
gotta,
for
I'm
real.
not a head coach. I'm not making millions of dollars, so you should adjust to that. I'll just stay
So
inside.
yeah,
How do
so
you
the
feel about
I was just looking. So the game is in Jacksonville, and I was looking at Apple Weather app, and it's
yeah.
not showing that it's gonna rain. So I hope
Oh, there you
that
go.
stands. Although,
Not even a
like, yeah,
problem.
chance of precipitation, they have it at 20%.
Oh, not bad.
Um,
I'll be
Not
fine.
bad, but
Don't worry about it.
yeah, I mean,
It's gonna
let's
start
just
hailing
say,
because of this.
yeah, I know, right? Let's just say hypothetically, like it does rain. Um, yeah, I know that would definitely be a concern, right? Given like the track record of this team in rain. Although, like in that one monsoon game against the Commanders, some couple years ago, they ended up winning that, and that was a very gritty game. Uh, Slightly different team now, though. I think with the way that they're currently built, like the way that the run defense is looking right now, I don't know if I would like a rainy game because you're just going to see more missed tackles, which is one of the things that they need to fix, right? And yeah, I don't know. Also, I didn't like what I saw from Brock when it seemed like the ball was wet, like just handling the
Yeah,
football kind
against
of seemed to be an issue.
yeah, that was an
Yeah.
issue against the
And Heinz
Seahawks and
says
early.
Brock needs gloves if it rains. Yeah, I don't like he needs gloves 100%. I don't know why he didn't put gloves on after like the ball slipped
I feel
once,
like
but
some people thinks it's some people think it's like embarrassing, but if it helps, Kenny Pickett wears gloves, and if it helps, you should do it. Like
you say they
Christian,
think it's embarrassing?
I think so. I think that like
But it's like I mean they're
it's like how when it's like freezing cold, like they don't want to wear long sleeves. Players are weird. I don't know. That's a
yeah,
thing, right?
maybe I don't know.
And go like, oh, like your hands aren't strong, you can't grip the football. It's like, all
Right,
right,
it's
well, if you win
like,
the
oh,
game, like
showing
that's what people are gonna care about.
it's a sign of weakness.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know, but
But
yeah, hopefully it doesn't rain. I mean, like I said, right now it doesn't look like it's gonna rain, and if not, it maybe won't be a factor. Hopefully we're not jinxing anything here. Well, hopefully that sticks.
How do you feel about the game coming up so far? I know it's the beginning of the week. Even if it doesn't rain, are you nervous about Trevor Lawrence, about the Jags offense, defense, Doug Peterson? I think he's a really good coach. How do you feel
They're a
right
good
before we
team.
wrap
They're a
up?
good yeah, they're a good team. Definitely this is going to be a test for this team. It's going to be a test for the defense, right? Like this is one of those games where it's like, okay,
That's
like
great. They
you
haven't had any tests so far on defense, so I'm super glad we're getting one of those.
but like they haven't. I mean, okay, after the bye week, after getting Chase Young, this is like uh what is it called? Like a not a heat check, but like a measuring stick, I guess, for the defense to see, okay, are you going to be improved after the bye week? Because that's what everyone's hoping and thinking is going to
Yeah.
happen. Like, is this defense going
It
to look
sucks that the
improved?
Jaguars are also coming off a bye week.
I
It's
know
like
you don't.
not
So
like that much of an
you don't
advantage.
have that benefit. Here are the things that the Jags offense does well that these last few weeks the 49ers defense has not done well. They've been running the football, which has kind of been an Achilles heel to the defense these last few weeks. Trevor Lawrence can run, so I mean, we saw Joe Burrow escape the pocket a couple times. I think they can have success running with Trevor if they need to, if he needs to escape. So
Yeah,
those sacks, that
he's
pressure needs to
immobile.
be there, and it needs to be there quick. So like that's one of the things like we need to see from this team, right? Coming off of this bye. And then like they also have some really good receivers. And I think that can be a challenge for these corners, right? So especially Isaiah Oliver, who has been terrible in coverage in the slot. And
Not mincing any words there.
no, I mean at this point it is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean the Jags have guys who I think all of their receivers could basically line up in the slot if they want to. Christian Kirk, for example, Zay Jones might come back. I'm not too sure about that one, but he's a good receiver as well. So it's gonna be a big test. I'm not so worried about the offense. I think if Deebo's back, I think they're gonna look like closer to the version that we had seen in the first 5 weeks of the season. I hope Trent is back. He didn't practice today, but I hope he has a lot of time
Yeah.
to get to that
Yeah.
point to be able to play.
And they
So
could be giving him some like veteran day. Like they like to let him rest even when
yeah,
he's not
technically
injured in the
today on
beginning of the week.
Monday was an extra practice day, right? Because of the bye week.
Yeah.
So let's see tomorrow if he practices at any capacity. Hopefully he does. But I'm not worried about the offense. I think my eyes are going to be all on the defense and what improvements they can make through this bye week, or what they have made through the bye week.
Me too. And I wonder if that will put. I do wonder if depending on their defensive performance, if that puts any extra flames on the whole Steve Wilkes fire stuff. I wonder if later this week, I think Kyle Shanahan speaks on Wednesdays normally, right? I wonder if he's going to have any updates on if Steve Wilkes is going to be on the sideline, if that's going to make this giant difference that all these fans think it will. I kind of don't think it will. Although I did hear someone say that it could help with the communication between Kyle and Steve Wilkes themselves. Like it could be less about the energy, but and it'll be a really interesting. I think coming off, it sucks to be coming off, or going into a bye and then coming off of all these losses, but it also does make my anticipation for how they are going to perform. Although they lost to the Indianapolis Colts in 2021 off a bye. That was their fourth loss in a row. So we know that it is possible, even if they lose against Indy or against Jacksonville, that they could turn it around. But hopefully we see, because you said that you didn't know who this team was. Hopefully we see a glimpse of who this team is against
Yeah,
Jacksonville.
exactly. Yep.
I think if anything, we should see a very motivated team. Kyle Shanahan going into the bye said that the film looked tired and kind of stagnant. And I think at the very least, we should see, if we're getting penalties, it should be for being too physical, too rough. Like I want them to be prepared.
Yeah, let's bring the Dre Greenlaw personal foul penalties back. That's what Ashley's saying. Let's go.
Okay. Well, I've kept you on here for over an hour. I missed talking with you. It was kind of fun to have this different perspective, not recapping a game, but
Yeah, this was a fun episode. I think because like we hadn't just witnessed like a loss or anything like that.
Yeah,
And
we
so
have some like distance from it, we're a little bit less.
we've had like a mental health break from the 49ers, and so like now we're in a good mood and hopefully
Does this
they
guy know
can.
something I don't, or is he just saying something? I feel like I didn't see this reported.
No,
Because of his
Greenlaw
shoulder?
before the bye week it was a shoulder injury, but I didn't see anything of him missing practice today, so I'm assuming he's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if he does miss practice, a lot of times he's one of those players that they let gonna go water boy on Trevor. This guy's just having fun in the comments. All right. Okay. I'm excited because I think that the Jags are actually going to be a challenge. It's not just an easy get right game. So I think
Yeah.
it'll hopefully speak to who the 49ers hope that they are, and hopefully they come out and try to make a statement with this game. And I don't mean a statement like they need to blow them out. I just hope that I hope they win, and I hope they look very competitive while winning, whether or not it's a close game or a blowout game. I just hope that they show the signs, because that was if I'm channeling Ashley from last Monday, my biggest disappointment wasn't necessarily the play, but it was like the effort that I felt. I felt like there was a lack of effort, which is not
Yeah,
something
I
that we're
agree.
accustomed to noticing in the 49ers. We don't usually associate them with business decisions. We usually associate them with making other teams make business decisions. So hopefully they get back to that part of their identity if I'm finishing up on that. So it
Yep,
was great
I
to see
agree.
you, Steph.
Yeah,
You're
you
blinged
too.
out, by the way. Someone said that earlier. They were like, Steph is shining.
Did someone say
It
that?
was quite
Oh.
a yeah, it was quite
It's
a
just because
while
of the
ago.
lighting. Like the
Oh, I
lighting is
love
just
that. You're like,
crazy
oh,
on my.
sorry. Did someone? No way. That's crazy. Did they?
No, it's
Oh,
the lighting. It's the
okay.
lighting. It,
Just
I
that was
swear.
all hilarious.
Also,
That it
it's
is
like
me.
super. I forgot that like with the daylight savings or whatever, it's like super dark now. It's
I
5 over
know.
here in Colorado, so I forgot to turn on a light before we went live, and now I'm like sitting in the dark aside from like my streaming lights. So
Well, you look very nice, and so does your chain and your hair. Like always, gotta steal a little Jason
oh, thank you,
compliment
thank you.
there. Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay,
They're
well,
kind of
everyone,
matching. I was like
I
matching a little
know.
bit.
Look at us.
Wasn't planned.
Everyone, like and subscribe. I'm gonna have more stuff coming out on my channel all week, and I just hit 1K earlier today, which I'm super excited about. Steph was the first person to do a stream with me on my channel. I was just looking. My
Oh,
first
yeah.
ever stream was a solo stream, and it was on September 29th. So pretty exciting. I've really enjoyed doing this, and it's made me really happy to kind of immerse myself in this community and be able to talk with everyone. So everyone, like and subscribe to my channel, and also like and subscribe to Steph's channel. If you have anything else you want to plug, your social media, anything like that, Steph, before we say goodbye.
No, I just want to say like shout out to everyone that tuned in. Like you guys have kept the comments lit. I appreciate all of you.
I
And
know
yeah,
it's been blowing up today.
if you're on my channel, make sure you go to Ashley's channel, Ashley Aireonna, and go ahead and subscribe to her channel as well. She has great content and a lot of great guests throughout the week. Not just myself.
Monday's the best. Monday's the best. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll be back next week. So hopefully freaking after a win. I'm excited to see. It's an interesting week coming up. Have a great one, guys. Thank you so much. Happy Monday.